Hi. It's time for another update on all things MK Ministry and Michele Phoenix, and I was about to settle down in front of my computer and write another newsletter, and then I remembered the voicemail I received last week from a wonderful gentleman in South Carolina named Bob Norris, and he told me that he actually doesn't mind the video versions of my newsletters or my news updates. And so because of Bob, and because this is easier than sitting down and finding pictures and doing the layout of a traditional newsletter, I'm going to do it in this format again just this once. So if you would just get a cup of coffee or tea or a glass of water or iced tea if you're in Bob Norris parts of the world, I'm going to try to keep it brief. I'm going to talk about my ministry, briefly update you on my time in France in May and June, and then bring you up to date on what's going on with my health as well. So let's start with ministry. When I came home from France, the first thing on my docket was the Teach Beyond pre-field orientation that happens to happen right here in Wheaton. And I love that this large mission that sends about 100 missionaries a year to work with MKs and the broader category of third culture kids, TCKs, that they have me in every year as part of their pre-field training and give me 2.5 hours to kind of unpack the MK thing with them, to talk about the challenges and the strengths and the experiences that shape MKs, and then that kind of instruct them on how to love them and teach them well, taking into consideration all of their uniqueness. So it was a little over 100 people this year that got to get all of this information, so that this entire crew that they're sending out this year will have the same vocabulary and the same understanding of the MKs and TCKs they're going to serve, and I love that. And then I'm also discovering that this ministry is kind of going digital. There's still the speaking and the writing and the consulting in a face-to-face manner here with people who come through Wheaton or with people that I go to meet on the road somewhere. But more and more people are finding me online through through the articles that I've written, or they're hearing about me through people who have sat in on some of my sessions, and they're writing to me and saying, we have a story to tell. We need to know if that's MK related. We need to know what you would suggest from an MK perspective. And so my ministry has moved towards the digital world and towards Skype. And I've got to say that I've always hated phone calls, with a passion. And I've hated Skype even more because really Skype is a phone call that you have to put lipstick on for, right? But I am finding the usefulness of meeting with these people that I don't know, but who have reached out to me and are looking for insight and answers. And so more and more my days are filling up with these Skype consultations or phone consultations that allow, again, the footprint of the ministry to expand in its global direction that it's been taking for the last few years. What's coming up for me in ministry actually starts in a week, and that is the Reboot Reentry Seminar in Canada, in Calgary this time. And we have, I think, 23 MKs coming this year. Most of them just leaving the field and starting new lives back in their passport culture. And it is such a unique week. I know that if you know me, you know that I love the Reboot Reentry Seminars. We live in very close confines. We eat together, we play together, we learn together. I get to be one of their teachers this coming week. I think about 8 hours of teaching on things like identity and culture and belonging, and then on some more delicate topics like modern sexuality, sacred sexuality is what I call it, and the Christian response to the LGBTQ plus community. So some delicate topics that require careful wording and wisdom in presentation and in interactions with the kids before and after. So I would appreciate your prayers for that kind of clarity as I address some of these issues with them. And then there was my trip to France, my quote-unquote vacation in France, which turned out to be about 18-hour days with very little downtime and sleep in between, following this documentary crew from this area to Normandy, where they're putting together a documentary called The Girl Who Wore Freedom, and for that they interviewed all of these wonderful, amazing American veterans who had been there on D-Day, who had stormed the beaches or jumped out of planes over Normandy, and who come back every year for the commemorations that happen in Normandy. And to be a part of that process, to be a part of sitting down with them and asking them questions, sometimes just me and this veteran while the crew was setting up for the next shoot or whatever was going on, and to have them kind of grab my hand and look into my face and tell me their memories was in many ways, I think, life-altering for me. To see history playing over their faces and playing out in their gazes as I looked into their faces was really a unique experience that I don't think I will have again in my lifetime. And I'm I'm so grateful that I got to go for that. One of the most unique and memorable experiences was on a day when there was a march happening in a town called Carentan. And this town was liberated shortly after D-Day, but in anticipation of the battles that were going to happen, the population left. It was an exodus, is what they call it. And every year they reenact that exodus and then the entry of the American and Allied forces coming into town. And I was standing by the side of this road and I looked down and somebody had pulled up a chair and this 93-year-old gentleman named Albert was sitting there and he was shaking and I could see the emotion on his face, and I kind of crouched down in front of him and asked him, what's your name and what do you remember of those days? And the conversation that followed was just an amazing moment for me as this man wept and told me about life before the liberation and the liberation itself, and then life afterwards as they rediscovered freedom as children. And it just so happened that one of the members of our crew was walking by and saw me having this conversation with Albert and pulled out his phone and started videoing it. So I put together a 3-minute video just about that talk that I have, that encounter that I had on the sidewalk in Carentan. And I'll post a link to that in the email associated with this video so you can see what that was all about. It was truly an extraordinary moment in my life, and I think you'll fall in love with Albert as I did. And now very briefly about my health. If you follow me on Facebook, you know that about 3 days into my French adventures, I posted and said, please pray. I see signs of infection in one of my fingers, and if you know me, you know that I had cancer-sparing surgery nearly 2 years ago, a year ago December, and that about 9 months after that I developed this swelling of my arm and hand called lymphedema, which is a normal side effect of that surgery, and that because of the lymphedema I became prone to something that resembles a staph infection. It's called cellulitis, and when it strikes it is dangerous, and it usually lands people in the ER and then in the hospital for a few days. Well, 3 days into my French trip, I started seeing signs that was happening. So I asked for prayer. And I know that hundreds, maybe thousands of you prayed. And I'm so grateful to say that it never materialized. It never became the cellulitis that I was fearing. But I have been working, as you know, in the medical field and in kind of the paramedical field to try and reduce the swelling in my hand and arm. If you've been following along, you knew that it used to be fairly severe, and I am now today down to this little glove, which actually is an arthritis glove, and I get to wear this about 4 or 5 hours of the day. It's more comfortable. It's not like the cast iron glove that I wear the rest of the time, but I used to have severe swelling in the back of the hand, and it is slowly going down. So I know that it's in part because of the surgery I had to help resolve this issue back in January, and great part because of you, because of the prayers that you have been saying on my behalf. You know that travel is essential for the ministry that I do, and that flying aggravates this condition. So even though it's supposed to be a lifelong condition that you just manage and never recover from, I live in the hope and the faith that in my case, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, it's going to be something that I can talk about in the past tense. So thank you for praying me to this new stage of my battles with lymphedema. I'm grateful for that. And I think that brings you up to date. If you're still listening, congratulations. I am going to post links in the email associated with this video so you can easily access some of the articles I've written lately and that video of Albert and a couple other things. A photo album of my time in France will be there as well that you can access and see some of the pictures. And I've actually written out all of the stories that I heard in my one-on-one interactions with some of these beautiful veterans that I got to meet. So thank you. Thank you for standing with me in this ministry and with me in my health battles. I have felt your prayers. Your giving makes it all possible, and I am so grateful for you. I hope this is a good day for you, and I will talk to you again in a few weeks, maybe by video, maybe in writing. Thank you for putting up with this new mode of communication. Have a good day.